Hello, everybody. This is AKA Heather Joy, and you have just boarded the lifeboat. Before I jump in, let me just run through the rules that we have here. The first one, please don't discuss politics in the live chat in the comment section. We leave that to Tommy. The second rule we have here, please, no overbearing religion here. This isn't a religious channel. It's fine to say, hey, I'm going to pray for you, or could not have found sobriety without my faith. Anything like that's fine. But please don't shove your religious beliefs down anyone else's throat. Let's respect one another's beliefs here. Third rule, of course, is please refrain from swearing in the live chat and the comment section. Is our captain always says, if you can't control your mouth, you can't control your life. And of course, number 4, no trolls. No room for mean people on this boat at all, okay? Anyway, let me see who we've got here. 7th, Trish, Allison, Charlie, Allen. 7th son, Trish Killian. I think I already said, let's see who else. Miss Dragon. Virginia's here. Let's see. Cindy, Snotface, Allison, Goosebump, Ghetto Joe. Let's see. Valerie, did I already say that? I don't know. Mind Games. Lenny. Let's see. Jason P's here. Scott Nay. Anybody else? Scooby, I see. If I missed you, I apologize. Oh, wait. I almost missed Noise Opera. Goodness, can't do that. Anyway, you guys, glad you are all here. Would love to ask everybody here. Oh, there's Balake and Carol. I would love to ask everyone at this time if you pray. Remember Tommy Bird and full of hope in your prayers today and tomorrow. Okay, appreciate it, and I will even stick a one in there from both Tommy and myself. Anyway, all right, you guys. How I even got onto what I'm going to talk about tonight was kind of a silly story. It's just something I do. I don't know. Every couple of years, I will go and take a couple of different psychology tests, some personality tests, that kind of thing. Because I've noticed ever since I first started, being interested in what they could possibly tell you about yourself, which was back when, good grief, when I just first left home, a long time ago. I've been fascinated what it can tell you about yourself, but I've also noticed that over time, mine have changed a great deal. So the other day I ran into one online and I thought, you know what, I'm curious, and I'm kind of surprised. There were some things that had changed a great deal from the last one I had done a couple of years ago. But what really shocked me, there were a few things that were on there that I thought I have moved way beyond. It really made me think. Started me down a whole rabbit hole, and I've been writing in my journal and doing research and writing all kinds of things ever since. And anyway, that just kind of started me down the track of talking about baggage. I think we all have it. This darn extra baggage, But I just want to make sure that we're really clear, first of all, on what I'm referring to when I'm speaking of extra baggage. I'm talking about the kind that, first of all, has a negative connotation to it. And then I was reading a couple of different clinical psychologists, what their definitions are hey baby, what their definitions are of extra baggage. And one of my favorite ones is she's a clinical psychologist that she's Harvard trained. Her name is Dr. Sabrina Romanoff, and she's a clinical psychologist. She has, I believe, she has a practice, and she's also a professor at Yeshiva University, which is, I believe, it's in New York, and I believe it's an Orthodox Jewish four-year college. I think, if I remember correctly. But anyway, this is what she says about it. In very much layman's terms. The term emotional baggage refers to emotional issues, stressors, pain, and difficulties we've experienced that continue to take up space in our minds and affect our present relationships. Get your claws out of my leg, kitty. Ow. I have my jeans on. Dang, she's sticking, or he, excuse me, is sticking right through my pants. Ow. Anyway, I thought, yeah, that's pretty fitting. That's how I've always understood it. I remember a college roommate that I had a very long time ago, and she always referred to her emotional baggage as something to the effect of a really heavy suitcase full of demons that we choose to drag everywhere along with us. And I thought, oh, that's a good one. And I hadn't even thought about that for a long time until I was digging into this a little bit more. I had remembered that. But I think it's something that is almost impossible to not accrue over time. Life isn't that easy. And we all have things that happen, whether it, broken hearts, toxic relationships, trauma of all kinds. If you go through these things that, you know, that give you issues, that cause you trauma, and you don't face it, these things are going to give you a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety. You don't face all of that. It does. It doesn't go away. And you can ignore it, but it's going to lead to all kinds of problems and issues. And, even though it's painful, it's something that especially, if as addicts, if we want to stay sober, this is something we have to face. We've got to face our demons. We have to. Or we're going to end up, locked in a cycle of addiction, because we know it's an easy way out, but it does not fix the issues. It might numb them for a little bit, but it just leads you further down into hell. And all of us that are here that are addicts or former addicts, or we know what that's like. Please quit calling me cat. Jeez. Anyway, and the longer we refuse to deal with the things that cause us all this pain, the more issues it causes, the more pain we go through, and it all just piles up, and it really does become extremely heavy. There's a heavy weight you carry on your shoulders, or if you drag it with you, however you want to envision it, but it's not easy. So I thought I would like to talk about some of the problems that, not only give us this baggage, but that, just increases the weight of the baggage over time. And there are quite a few things that we all share in common in this way. And I just thought, if I talk about some of these, maybe it will click something in your head that will make you realize, wait, maybe I need to take care of that, or maybe that's something that's still really bothering me. Because I found, especially when I was first trying to get sober, there was such a mess in my head. I don't know. It was very difficult to tell what was right, what was wrong, what was up, what was down. And it takes a while to start to figure that out. So I'm hoping that this will help. But, please quit clawing me, honey. Oh, goodness. Emotionally wounded people struggle with relationships. And, we need connection as addicts. That's the opposite of addiction. We've got to have relationships. We've got to have healthy strong, meaningful, loving, nurturing relationships. And we also need to be able to give the same back to people. But, people that have been emotionally damaged, it's a challenge. It really is. And it's usually, because you're afraid. You're afraid of being hurt. A lot of times people will do this in an unconscious manner, but you will push people away. And if you've ever heard people talk about, oh, he or she is just afraid of commitment and they never want to commit, I don't think it's an actual fear of commitment as much as it's just they don't want to be hurt again. I think that's what it really is, because when it comes right down to it, everybody needs, more than anything, to have be in a committed, loving relationship. We all need that. A lot of times not having that from the beginning of our lives has given us so much baggage in the first place. But it's not that you're afraid of commitment. You're afraid of being hurt again. That's what it really is. I really don't think that it's the commitment that has anything to do with it when you really look at it. But anytime you've been through something traumatic, please sit still. Come here, sit down. There you go. Anytime that something traumatic happens and you don't deal with it, your brain, it's a very automatic thing that you do. In essence, you start to protect your heart. And for people that are familiar with energy work, there's something that is called a heart wall. And boy, I better not go down that tangent, but it basically you're doing things to protect your heart from being hurt again. And it's a very real thing from all of my experience, but it's protection. So if you find that you get to know someone and you really love them, you really care for them, but you want to commit, but you just can't, might be a sign right there that there's something you need to take care of, because it's crazy. You can't, you want to be close to someone, but you can't allow yourself to be emotionally close to somebody. But on the other end, you can't stand being alone at the same time. And that creates, a lot of problems right there. But, one of the big problems, and I have to pull up the rest of my notes. They're on my computer now. Let's see. But, what another thing that does is, by doing that, a lot of people end up jumping from one relationship to the next, and pull up my notes here. Here we go. Here's the rest of my stuff now. Having, being alone, spending time alone is something that all of us need at times. But it's difficult to be by yourself if you aren't, as Tommy always refers to it, is if you're not comfortable in your own skin, it's very difficult to be by yourself all the time. And that's very true. I'll pass over that idea. I'll just keep going. I could really squirrel off, guys. I'm trying really hard to stay on track here. Anyway, I was talking about, if you can't stand to be alone, but you're afraid to commit, you're afraid to, be a little bit vulnerable and, get in touch emotionally with someone, and, and let your emotions be shown. The whole transaction that goes on in relationships, or how it's supposed to go on. If you can't do that, you're going to be jumping from one relationship to the next, because you can't get close, but you can't stand to be alone at the same time. And at the same time, you can't stand, you don't want to be alone, and being alone is an important part of sobriety. You've got to become comfortable with that. You've got to become comfortable with yourself, and it takes time. I'm still struggling on all of this. But the thing about being alone is that's when you really have to face your demons, and it's not fun. It's quite painful. um, and so a lot of people, instead of facing their demons, will just be constantly going and seeking the company of other people. Sometimes if you see people that are just serial dating, and you'll see that they're always dating, they're always with a new person, but they're never committing to anybody, and they're you know that might be a good a good another sign that there's some serious emotional baggage going on there. um and a lot of times people that do that jump from relationship to relationship and just can't commit, um they pretend that they really enjoy this kind of lifestyle, and they might even boast about what it's like. um but when some if from my experience, I mean, talking to people as a psych nurse about this, a lot of times, people that do that are really seriously hurting, and they're not proud of all the promiscuity that often enters into relationships like that as well. It can really end up just causing even more issues and even more emotional baggage. And it's a difficult thing to overcome. It takes, once you start to work through your issues, you really have to take a leap of faith and try. If you want to have a committed, wonderful, loving relationship, you have to take that chance again. But I think it's important that you start doing some preparation before you get to that point. But really, when it comes down to it, if you want to have that kind of relationship, you've got to take care of the problem, and then you've got to take that chance again and risk being hurt again. you know um I was also thinking that a lot of sometimes it's not just a lot of times this isn't just a thing where it's just romantic partners, romantic relationships. I mean, this stuff stems way, way, way back, uh, from when you were very, very small a lot of the time. And it was maybe your needs were not met, or um, you weren't allowed to voice your opinion or voice what you wanted. You had no say in anything. Sometimes it is, not wanting to be alone but not wanting to be close stems from that as well, and that can affect not just the romantic types of relationships. It can be, it can just, wow, cause people so much more pain in the end. Anyway, another thing, that's really makes things difficult for people that have a lot of emotional wounds, um, is having really successful relationships because of a lot of inner paranoia, inner fear. Um, a lot of times you'll see this. I've noticed this in people that are really, really needy. They're so needy, and they need that constant reassurance. And the person on the other end of the friendship will get very, very tired of that very quickly, because it's exhausting. If you are around someone who is needy and is needing constant reassurance, and you've got to talk them up constantly, I've actually had to end a couple of friendships because I couldn't. It was so taxing on me. And it's really sad. And what is behind that is just there's this constant fear, this constant paranoia, and it all stems from something that's happened in the past. Um, I've seen it, in romantic relationships. I have heard patients talk about this where they would they would find someone that they really care about, but they were so needy and always so worried, and they were always so worried that after one little minor disagreement, they just jumped to conclusions and thought, okay, the whole relationship's so all over, and it would just they couldn't understand that one little disagreement is just part of life, is part of relationships. And they just don't have a normal way of reacting to things like that. And it can really sabotage a relationship, that fear, that paranoia that you're going to be left, or that you're going to do something that's going to displease somebody, the other person. And that leads into other issues as well. People and I'm still working on this one personally. I have been one that used to do anything. I would go out of my way, bend myself in half when I had to avoid any type of conflict. If somebody did something that really offended me or that hurt me, I would never speak up. I wouldn't say a word about it for fear of just I don't know. I think personally for me it goes back to fear of rejection, because I think that's what goes down to it with myself. But I would do anything to avoid confrontation. It's not a good thing, guys. I really made this mistake over and over and over again with my first marriage, where I just let everything go. I just pretended to ignore it. I was so afraid of being alone or being left, or not being accepted, which and I look back at that whole first marriage, what a mess that thing was anyway. But I didn't voice to him the things that were getting to me, and the things that I needed, and the things that weren't working. And it just built up this level of resentment that just grew and grew and grew and grew. And it caused me, I know with me, if I have things that go unresolved that have made me angry, or where I bear a lot of resentment towards somebody and I haven't taken care of them, and I let it go, and I let it go, and I let it go, it turns into depression for me. And I'm not talking just being sad. I'm talking about, wanting to no longer be here sad. And it's something that I've had to learn to, I hate confrontation to this day, but I've learned it's much better to say things and get it taken care of than to let it build up, because I am very prone to deep depressions. I have to be very careful with this one, and yeah. But it's not good to avoid confrontation. In any relationship, there's give and take, and it's got to come both ways. If you're not getting what you need, or if there's something going on, you need to say something. If the person you're in the relationship with, regardless of what kind of relationship it is, if they really love you, if they really care about you, they're going to listen, and they're not going to brush it under the rug once you tell them. It's a terrifying thing to do, though. And I still, every time I have to bring up an issue with somebody, because it's going to drive me crazy if I don't, my heart just gets beating like crazy. My palms start getting sweaty, and I just feel awful. I hate it to this day. But I make myself do it, because the relationships I have now, I mean a great deal to me. I'm not willing to lose them. And just something to remember, in healthy relationships, honest communication is absolutely necessary. And if someone is unhappy about something, what are you? My cat just bit me. Lovely. I don't put up with that. Anyway, if in healthy relationships, if you're not happy, you've got to say something, you know, or it's just going to add to that baggage, and it's going to get heavier and heavier. Um, and it might even be just something that maybe your friend or your partner, whomever it is just doing something that just bugs you. You still got to say something. Maybe it's just that you don't understand why they're doing it. Sometimes it's just that, but I mean, you've got to say things. Just trying to avoid an argument is not a healthy thing to do, guys. I know it's hard. I know, but where this comes from is being another thing. It's being a people pleaser, and I know there are a lot of us here. And I didn't realize how this next thing, and it ties all in. I didn't realize how irritating I must have been to so many people in my life. But it goes right along with the people pleasing thing, the avoiding confrontation. You apologize constantly. I used to do it, and I'm trying to be a lot better about it. I didn't realize how maddening it is when you are working with someone that is constantly apologizing to you, until it happened to me. When I was a nurse, and I had someone working under me, that it drove me crazy. But I didn't even realize I was doing it until someone pointed it out to me, and it was a very close friend. And she said, "Now, do you realize that you're doing this? And do you realize how irritating that is?" And at first it shocked me, but I was so grateful that she said something. And then it made me remember about the time that people that I was working with were doing it to me. I was about to lose my mind. It's an exhausting thing, but there's a reason for it, and there's a good reason for it. So if you do this too, don't be kicking yourself. Let me explain to you, and I'm sure you probably already know why this happens. But a lot of times, if you have been in a situation, maybe it was the family that you grew up in, if you've been in a situation where you are constantly walking on eggshells, and you're just trying to keep everybody happy and everything okay to keep things calm, you get very good at apologizing for anything and everything, regardless of whether it's your fault or not. You just automatically do it, because a lot of times, in dysfunctional toxic families, and in toxic relationships, and often I've seen it with when it's a person that has a lot of narcissistic tendencies, they just expect you to say that, and and you're just trying to placate them, and you'll do it. Just it becomes an unconscious automatic response. You just apologize for everything. Even if, say you're walking down the hall, and somebody's walking the other way, and they're not watching where they're going, and they bump into you, and they spill their coffee all over you. You start apologizing, even though you had nothing to do with it. It wasn't your fault. I mean, that's, and a lot of people do it just to be polite. And it's quite an English trait, I've noticed as well. But it's not, it's not okay. And there's no problem with having something done to you and you not apologizing. I mean, it's a totally okay thing. It's, unless you do something to someone and you either didn't realize what you were doing, or sorry, I've got so many thoughts going through my head. Goodness. Okay. Let me just think a second here. Let me breathe. Sorry, I've been writing and I've got so many things going through my head and I just need to calm everything down. Good grief. Um. Anyway, and I forgot what exactly where it was, but I was talking about, over apologizing. You want to prevent displeasing anybody, and this again, this is just another part of being a people pleaser. Um, if you grew up, especially, I've seen this a lot, if you grew up in a situation where you were constantly afraid of disappointing your parents, or if it was, if it's a past relationship, maybe a romantic partner, and you were just always in fear of disappointing them because of the way that they would behave, or gosh, it could come from so many different places, but you it goes to the same thing, of over apologizing, and just trying to avoid all that confrontation. I know I've spoken about this before, but it's been a while. When you're in a dangerous situation, or a situation that you interpret as being dangerous, you're going to have a couple of different responses. There's the fight or flight, but there's also freeze, and there's also fawning response. Now, the fawning response is very similar, but it is a learned response, but it's something that you learn, and then it just becomes very automatic. And fawning is just doing whatever you can to please people and keep them happy. And a lot of times you'll see this with people that will be so afraid of being fired that they'll do anything, to please their boss, and they will, work overtime, and they'll sacrifice their personal time, and they'll take it so far as where it starts, take, affecting their health and things like that. But they're so afraid of disappointing someone, because of something that happened to them a long time ago. But that's fawning. That's a fawning response. And it's a difficult one to stop yourself from doing. And I'm still working on it, but I'm getting a lot better. But it's important to work on, if you are apologizing all the time for things, if you are avoiding conflicts, if you are, if you've got that funny response and it's very automatic, it's going to lead to issues. It's going to affect your health, your mental health. You're going to become exhausted. Sometimes you can even get completely burned out. So, that's it. Those are things but these are, all from emotional baggage that hasn't been dealt with. Um, Another thing that happens quite a bit is people that have emotional baggage. If it impacts your relationships, it's going to impact all areas of your life. And because carrying these burdens around, whether you feel like you carry them around on your shoulders, or I love that suitcase full of demons that just gets drug around everywhere. But those that stuff, it can affect not just your relationships, like I said, all different areas of your life. And it brings a lot of challenging emotions, a lot, guilt, fear, shame, just lots of self-doubt, negative thinking about yourself, about others, about life in general. I mean, but it can really weigh you down in that manner. I think it really, can really affect your self-image. If you're failing with relationships, it's gonna, like I said, it's gonna transfer into all these other places. Um, but it's really going to affect how you feel yourself, and about how you feel about yourself, how you see yourself. You might not feel that you are worthy of having a loving relationship, that you're not worthy of being successful in work or in, I mean, like I said, this can transfer in just so many areas of your life. But people that have this kind of emotional baggage and or their self-esteem suffers, they tend to self-sabotage not just the relationships but so many other areas in their lives. um, it might go down to, maybe you have an opportunity at work for a possible promotion but you choose not to go after it. um, Maybe you just feel like maybe you hate your job and you don't feel like you deserve something better, so you just stay there. um, maybe you finally meet somebody that you really want to get to know, but the closer it gets to that date, the more you start to worry, and you let those negative thoughts take over, and you back out of the date. I mean, there's just so many ways that this can happen. But it really does, it can transfer into so many other areas of your life. And I know, for me, as far as this one goes, something that I have always my whole life struggled with is procrastination. I will let things go, and I will let things go, and I'll let things go to the last minute before I absolutely got to take care of them. But I've been writing about this one for a long time, because I'm like, why am I doing that? It just adds to the chaos in my life, and I don't need that. And I figured out that it's fear of failure, it's fear of rejection, it's fear of being, I can't really put my finger on it, but I think it's fear. I think it's fear of failing, or maybe of disappointing somebody, or maybe it's disappointing myself. I don't know, but I know that is definitely something that I do, and that's just a form of self sabotage, to procrastinate. Because I do end up getting things done, but things would I just wouldn't procrastinate, and chop things up into smaller pieces, and at the same time deal with whatever it is that's driving the fear behind it all. I'm doing a lot better. So I'm working on it. But you know what? I didn't even figure out the reason. It's been my journaling where I finally figured out that's why I'm doing it. I'm like, oh wow! But it took me a long time to figure that one out. I know that people that have a lot of emotional baggage, there are other ways of self sabotage would be, um, I'm trying to think. Earlier, I should have just written them down. I think, oh, I'll remember all of those other things, but they're similar to to procrastinating, or um, something else that I have noticed, that my husband is really struggling with a lot of stuff from his childhood. And when he struggles with things, I can tell, because the clutter he leaves gets so much crazier. And so there's got to be something there, that's doing the same thing for him, in a way, would be my guess. But I can see how, if you are very unorganized and your things are cluttered and you can't find what you need when you need it, it's another form of self sabotage. And I'm going to look more into that. But there's lots of different ways that can happen. But you know what? One of the biggest things, and this is why I saved this one till last. One of the biggest things that is a consequence in many, many cases of emotional baggage, stuff that hasn't been dealt with, is that you're going to struggle with addiction. It's just, it happens. So many things that happened to us, especially during childhood, are linked to addictive behaviors and substance abuse or other types of behaviors that are addictive. And I was looking at a bunch of different things, different bits of research regarding this, and I found a whole bunch of stuff. But the first one that I ran into was a study that was done by a magazine in 2021, and they interviewed a whole bunch of different people who had experienced a lot of childhood trauma. And what they found out in the end was that everyone that they had been talking to them about the trauma, everyone that they happened to interview also had a history of addiction. And it's very easy to get caught up in this one, especially you be, you know, if you have a lot of trauma, especially childhood trauma, then you probably don't have the coping mechanisms, the coping skills. You haven't had relationships and people in your life from which to learn ways to resolve conflicts and to take care of things. You haven't seen it, you haven't seen a good example, you haven't been taught it, and you don't know what to do. You know, eh, but you get to the point where, for me, I mean, I knew it went against everything that I believe, and I still turned to it in the end because I couldn't stand the pain any longer. And the other things that I had tried, just I had no idea what I was doing back then. But it's not just drug addiction. It's not just alcohol. It can be food for so many people. Um, there's gambling, sexual types of addictions. I mean, there's just so many different ways that this can happen. But you do it because you don't. In the end, you just don't know what else to do, and you cannot stand the pain any longer. And we all know it works for a little while, but not for long. And then it becomes the master of you, and it just adds and compounds all that baggage that you've already been dragging around. Not a good thing. So what do we do? that's that's a hard question to answer, just in general. I mean, because it's going to be such an individual thing for everybody about, how are you going to deal with these things. But I think the first key is to recognize that the stuff that's happened in your past, there's something that is affecting you, or you wouldn't be coming back to the addiction over and over and over. That's you got to work on self-awareness. You got to figure out what is it and how is it affecting me. I mean, that's the first call right there. And I was listening to someone who is a counselor, I mean, a dear friend, and I wrote this down when I was talking to him, because he said, anything that we can name, we can deal with. Things that we deny control us. Is that ever true? Oh my goodness, is that ever true? If we are in denial that there's anything from our past that we haven't dealt with, or if we are in denial of how it's messing up our lives, it's going to continue to play, be in control. And so again, you need to recognize how it's affecting you. Another thing to do, before I jump into the next thing, I was just saying, but you get to that point with self-awareness, with mindfulness. Best way that I know of is journaling, writing. Um, it is also very helpful, if you cannot work this stuff out on your own, if you can't figure it out, getting some professional help, even just enough for a third party to look at things and point things out that you can't see yet. Um, even just getting a start that way is good. Anyway, the next thing that you can do is maybe change your perception a little bit. You know, it's just reality. Everybody at one time or another is going to be hurt, treated poorly. They're going to have some kind of pain from their past. What do you do with it? You can continue to be a victim to it and allow it to control everything in your life, or you can face it, and if you can change your perspective and not look at it as this happened to me, therefore I have these issues. Look at it as, okay, yes, this has happened. Yes, it sucked. Yes, it's done some damage, but what can I learn from it? Change your perspective a little bit. Look at it as something you can learn from, something, there's got to be something there that can teach you something, or it's not. The way I see things, it wouldn't be there in the first place if it wasn't there to teach you something, and it's going to remain there until you figure it out. It does you no good to continue to be a victim to it. Change the way you're looking at it and say, okay, wait a minute, this is still here, I'm still dealing with this. What is it trying to teach me? Really, that's a good place to start too. It's just, a slight change in your perception about it. The other thing that I can suggest is focusing on the present. Try not to look too much to the past, and also not trying to look too much into the future, because a lot of the time, if you look too much into the future, so many of the fears and the anxieties take over, and they make your future look like something that's just impossible, where you really should be concentrating on the here and now, and what you can be doing right now, what you have control over, what you can improve. I'm sure you guys understand what I'm saying, but it does us no good. It does us no good to ignore all of this baggage. And yes, it hurts when you have to look at it. It's not fun. Best thing to do is just do it, though. I mean, you don't have to do it all at once, but you've got to start. You've got to at least make the decision, you're going to face it. You're going to slay, maybe just one demon at a time, but you got to do it, or you're going to end up constantly relapsing and then starting over again, and trying to get it. If you want that sobriety, you got to do the hard work behind it. And it's not fair. The things that have happened to you, they're not fair. No, you didn't deserve it. It's just the way life is, though. And we can choose to be victims to everything, or we can choose to overcome everything that gets in our way and just keep moving forward. And that's the path I've chosen. And I mean, once I finally really truly chose that and decided I'm not going to be a victim to any of this stuff anymore, that's when things changed so much for me. If I hadn't done that, I don't think I'd still be sober. In all honesty, I don't think I would at all. Anyway, just one other thought that I just want to have is, and I know I believe I said this last week, but when it comes right down to it, if you work on you for a time, work on you, work on your issues, work on the things that you can control, work on learning from your problems and learning from your past. If you can do those things and just work on you, and practice some good self-care, and figure out how to start loving yourself and appreciating the person that you are and the survivor that you are. When you start to love yourself, things tend to fall into place. Seriously. And that one continues to blow my mind. Things, when I am doing what I'm supposed to be doing, things tend to fall into place for me. And it's wonderful. I'm not saying my life is easier at all. It's not, but I don't know, the things that I need tend to fall into place now, and it's really nice. But I have to always remember that commitment to myself and my sobriety first. If I want to make a difference to other people, which I do, and if I want to, you know, take good care of my family, take care of the people that mean a great deal to me, I have to put me first, because I cannot do these other things that I want to do without taking care of me first. And it goes against so much for so many of us. That goes against, for so long we have put everyone else ahead of ourselves and what we need. It's time to stop that. Seriously, it's time to stop that. It's not easy, but dang it, guys, it's so worth it. It really is. Really is. Let me pull back the comments here. Let's see. Who else has snuck in here? I see Orton, John Doe. Ah, Tommy popped in, Miss Dragon. I think you were here earlier, but Mark's here. Hey. Lemmy came in. James came in. Awesome. Awakened. Did I say you? Oh, there's Seagull Rock Squad. Tina Marie. Let's see. If I have missed you, I apologize. Let's see. Anyway. Well, you guys, I'm sure I'll be back on tomorrow. I will be back on. Oh, I just. Oh, sorry. I'll be back on in a little while. I gotta go feed some chickens and take a dog for a walk, and then I will be back to give you my little blurb on what I've been digging up about caffeine. So, anyway, I will talk to you guys again in a little bit. Thank you for coming and spending time here, you guys, and for being there for one another. So, anyway, talk to you in a little bit.